From podcasts to TV shows and headlines, true crime is everywhere, and I mean everywhere. High-profile criminal trials have gripped our attention time and time again, but the attorneys closest to them say all that public interest has major impacts on their cases.
Our next guests have a brand new podcast called The Presumption, where they share their insider expertise on all things true crime and tell us what they wish we knew about the court cases capturing all those headlines. Joining us now is criminal trial attorney and legal analyst Sara Azari and Jim Griffin, who recently defended Alec Murdaugh in his murder trial in South Carolina. Jim, I covered the Murdaugh case and the Murdaugh trial, so I would like to start with you. I mean, that case got so much attention. What was that like for you as an attorney defending a client?
Well, Eva, I mean, it was something that I'd personally never experienced before, and the only thing that I can compare it to was when I was watching the O.J. Simpson trial, frankly. I mean, it was national media descended on South Carolina the day after Maggie and Paul were murdered. That's where I met you, and I met a lot of people as a result. There was national coverage, there's local coverage, and there were, documentaries. And so as we were going into this trial, it was very, very difficult to find any juror, potential juror, who didn't know a lot about the case of what they read in the media, saw on television, and frankly, there was a lot of misinformation that was out in the public domain that made it difficult to pick a jury in the case.
And people really went for you as well.
Well,
they're still going for it.
Like, they haven't stopped.
Yeah, so, we take that, that's the business we chose, and the same people who would tag me today or yesterday, if they were in trouble, they would hopefully call. So.
And Sara, it is good to see you. The podcast is called The Presumption of Innocence. It, references that. But you guys have become a lot more, I guess like to call it the assumption of guilt when it comes to people sort of casting their own opinions. People automatically say your clients are guilty.
Well, the old trope is, DeMarco, that if the guy's arrested, he did it, he's guilty. And it's like, no. And, and then they say, like, they refer to us as the bad guys who represent the really bad guys. And how do you sleep at night? We sleep just fine because we protect the Constitution and we hold the prosecution to their burden. And the presumption of innocence is at the heart of the burden of proof, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And so as much as we enjoy this fascination and this, interaction with what we do, it's like Jim said, it's incredibly dangerous because more and more, the irony is that more and more courts are excluding cameras from the courtroom and issuing gag orders, like in the Idaho case. And so this immense public interest is basically turning into speculation, misinformation in social media and mainstream media. And then by the time the accused gets to trial, they're already convicted.
Yeah, that has to be tough when it comes to finding a fair jury.
Right. And both sides want a fair trial because the prosecution also doesn't want to deal with years of appellate issues. So it's a problem.
Jim, I have to ask you, there's obviously, Sara just outlined some negatives, but there are some positives of all of this attention. We've seen some cases that were not solved, these internet sleuths now solving them. Are there pros and cons to this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the attention that true crime is getting today over social media and the internet and streaming platforms has opened up, law enforcement have receiving a lot of assistance in finding missing people, finding missing bodies, and getting information that is helpful. There's also some cons too, by the way, because any of these high-profile cases, the law enforcement's trying to do an investigation confidentially so that they will not, damage the reputation of people who don't get charged. But there's this clamor for information, and so there's this there's two things that are at play. One is law enforcement feel like they have to solve it quickly in order to get the heat off their back. And then the other, if they can't solve it quickly, they feed the media with leaks that, ultimately prove to be false and harmful.
And Sarah, the more that people watch these cases, everybody becomes an expert. Everybody has a law degree. What do you want people to know or wish people knew behind the scenes about your client and what goes on?
And what we do. I mean, I think there's so many myths. I think number one, like I said, we protect the Constitution and we sleep just fine. Number two, we wear a lot of different hats. You know, prosecutors seek justice for victims, enforce the law. We become addictionologists, mental health experts, you know, family unifiers. And then there's a learning curve for us. You know, we learn about new technology and science all the time. Like Jim and I didn't know about IgG, investigative genetic genealogy. It hasn't come up in our cases, even though we've done a lot of cases involving DNA. And so we were just doing an episode of our podcast, but that could very well come up in a case. So we're doing all that. And what you see on TV with the cross-examination and all the fun and that, I mean, that's the fun stuff. You know, we wear a lot of different hats. And then last but not least, I think people think that the accused is like running the show. No, we're running the show. The accused makes two decisions. One is whether or not to go to trial. The other one is whether or not to take the stand.
What is fueling this obsession with true crime? What do you think?
You know, Eva, this is really nothing new. You know, back before there was television, even radio. I mean, the center of any town or community was the courthouse. And whenever there were courts, you know, court was in session, that's where the community, you know, gathered. And old courtrooms were majestic and they would hold hundreds of people. And what we, you know, and who can forget, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird, Gregory Peck, and the great trial scene, the courtroom was packed. And so there is this interest in true crime. Now we have, you know, technology has enabled, you know, a wider distribution of information. And so, you know, I don't think it's nothing new, although the mechanism by which people can follow trials is new.
Well, and I think there's social media, and then there's also the unlimited real estate that podcasts bring. Like Serial was responsible for the vacating of the conviction about Adnan Syed, and so you know, podcasts can go on and on and on. It's not like the valuable airtime on, you know, on your show, for example. So you know, there's just so much that allows people to be part of the narrative and be the detective and the lawyer that they always wanted to be. So
it is fascinating.
Yes, it is. Thank you, and good to see you guys as well.
Good to see you.
Thank you for being here. And The Presumption is available wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.